First, I would like to recognize and thank Oakland Police Chief Armstrong, as well as Contra Costa District Attorney Dina Bechten for their partnership, support, and attendance this morning. Both will also be speaking here today, spotlighting some of the issues that are trending in our neighborhoods and jurisdictions and offering insight from their perspectives and experience. On August 29th of 2020, 20-year-old Donze Young was murdered in broad daylight in a quiet residential neighborhood on Tioga Pass Way in Antioch. He was chased on foot while being gunned down by a male subject who used a rifle caliber AR pistol. After Young fell, the suspect stood over him and used an execution-style tactic and fired additional shots, murdering him. Detectives learned that Young was an active case criminal street gang member, and he was targeted by a rival criminal street gang known as ENT, due to an ongoing and violent feud between the two Oakland-based gangs. This initial homicide led to a long-term investigation into the violence surrounding this gang feud. Detectives quickly realized Young's murder introduced a larger narrative between the ENT and case criminal street gang rivalry, and this was just the tip of the iceberg. The investigation led into a deep dive of the historical background of the ENT and case criminal street gangs in Oakland and Antioch to include their violent criminal behavior and lifestyle, and resulted in linking several other gang-related homicides, attempted homicides, and shootings committed in the months before and after Young's murder. Antioch detectives reached out to Oakland Police Department's intelligence, crime reduction, and gang ceasefire units to leverage their valuable knowledge and extensive experience with these two gangs. The partnership, collaboration, and open communication between our two agencies was critical to the success of the investigation, and was the flexibility and adaptiveness of the staff involved while the joint investigation and overall effort began to take shape. As the investigation took off, Antioch and Oakland detectives identified the following timeline, linking 17 shooting events and uncovering associates relevant to the ENT case gang rivalry. Over the past year, Antioch had 1 homicide, 5 shooting victims, and 4 shootings where no known victims were identified. In Oakland, they had 1 homicide, 6 shooting victims, and 3 shootings where no victims were identified. In about the middle of this timeline, Donze Young was murdered. During Young's murder investigation, the Antioch Investigations Bureau also investigated 2 additional attempted homicides, not directly associated to the Young murder, but linked through the gang rivalry. This effectively widened the scope of the current investigation and increased the overall amount of resources needed to bring these cases to a successful resolution. During the ongoing investigation on February 27th of 2021, a 21-year-old victim was ambushed and shot multiple times in broad daylight after he parked at a gas station on Lone Tree Way in Antioch. As he exited the vehicle, he was shot approximately 10 times by a male subject who used a 10mm semi-automatic firearm. After the victim fell, the suspect stood over him and struck him in the head with the firearm before fleeing the scene in a vehicle. Associates with the victim returned gunfire prior to driving the victim to a local hospital. Detectives learned the victim was an active case gang member, and he was likely targeted by an ENT gang member. Currently, the victim is alive and recovering from his injuries. Later that evening, there was a reprisal shooting in Oakland. Several of the victim's associates drove to Cap Street and Brookdale Avenue and fired several gunshots. Oakland officers, aware of the earlier shooting, quickly responded to the area. After several foot chases, Oakland officers detained 7 case gang members and seized 7 firearms. 10 days later, on March 9th, 2021, Antioch officers responded to a drive-by shooting in a residential neighborhood on Aspen Way. The 21 and 22-year-old male victims just entered their vehicle to drive away when a suspect vehicle that had been waiting for several hours drove towards them. Multiple suspects opened fire, critically injuring the driver and wounding the passenger. Currently, the driver is alive, but fighting for his life. Near the end of March 2021, and in collaboration with the District Attorney's Office, it was determined the Antioch Police Department Investigations Bureau had enough evidence to arrest and prosecute those responsible for murdering Donze Young and attempting to murder the victims from the Lone Tree Way gas station and the Aspen Way shootings. On March 30th, 2021, Charles Bolden Jr. was arrested in Oakland by Oakland PD for the murder of Donze Young. Afterwards, a firearm and a large amount of cash were seized from the vehicle he was driving. Later that day, Charles Bolden Sr. was also located and arrested in Oakland for the Young murder. He was contacted near 41st Street in Oakland and fled on foot to a backyard shed where he barricaded himself. After a short standoff, Bolden Sr. was arrested peacefully by Oakland PD. Afterwards, a pistol was seized from the vehicle he arrived in, along with 2 more firearms on the premises. On March 31st, 2021, 5 search warrants were served simultaneously, supported by SWAT operations or tactical teams in different jurisdictions. 2 locations in Antioch were conducted by the Antioch PD SWAT team on Finsuren Road and by the Brentwood PD SWAT team on Toyon Way. The 3rd location was in the city of Merced on Willowbrook Drive and conducted by the Merced PD SWAT team. The 4th location was in the city of Modesto and conducted by their tactical team, and the last was in the city of Los Angeles, which was conducted by their gang field unit. Eric Wyndham was arrested in Merced, and Keyshawn McGee was arrested in Los Angeles for the attempted murder and drive-by shooting perpetrated on Aspen Way. Later that morning in Antioch, a fugitive apprehension team consisting of the Antioch Problem-Oriented Policing Team and undercover detectives attempted to contact Trent Allen as a passenger in a vehicle. Allen fled on foot through a business parking lot and was chased through a residential neighborhood. The fugitive apprehension team caught Allen and took him into custody for his role in the attempted murder and drive-by shooting on Aspen Way. Later that same day, the Antioch Fugitive Apprehension Team located Terrion and Armani Pugh, both who were parolees at large, hiding out in an apartment complex in American Canyon. With the assistance of American Canyon PD and the Napa County Sheriff's Office, Terrion Pugh was taken into custody as he tried to flee in an awaiting vehicle. Armani Pugh was taken into custody without incident pursuant to a search warrant for the location. And during a search, a firearm and a large amount of cash were also seized. Terrion Pugh was additionally arrested for the attempted murder at the Lone Tree Way gas station and for his part in the attempted murder in the drive-by shooting on Aspen Way. On April 1st of 2021, 2 search warrants were simultaneously served and supported by SWAT operations in the cities of Vallejo and San Leandro. The Antioch PD SWAT team arrested DeMarco Lindsay in Vallejo for the murder of Young. Evidence and firearms were located at the scene and collected. The San Leandro PD SWAT team served a search warrant in their city at a location associated with Lindsay, and additional firearms were collected there as well. During the course of this investigation, Antioch Police Department's Special Operations Unit and newly formed gang team dedicated 8 undercover detectives who provided more than 1,825 hours performing duties related to undercover operations, surveillance, interdiction, and arrests for those cases. Antioch Police Department's Violent Crime Unit, Problem-Oriented Policing Team, crime analysts, and crime scene investigators dedicated another 23 detectives and staff members who provided more than 4,750 staff hours, performing duties related to the investigations, interviews, data analysis, historical research, community engagement and collaboration, search warrants, video surveillance collection, crime scene reconstruction, and rapid evidence processing. The Antioch Investigations Bureau authored and served over 100 search warrants. 40 firearms, to include assault weapons, were seized and sent to the Contra Costa County Crime Lab for processing, and 15 of those were ghost guns. A ghost gun is a homemade or improvised firearm that lacks commercial serial numbers. 36 adult members of the ENT and case criminal street gangs were identified, along with 15 juveniles. Many of them were arrested for crimes relating to shooting assaults, robbery, burglary, firearm violations, and illegal drug sales. I cannot emphasize enough how incredibly proud I am of the men and women of the Antioch Police Department. Their hard work, tenacity, professionalism, and commitment to public safety inspires me daily, and I am honored to be their chief. In addition to the human factor, it cannot be overstated that the technological advancements leveraged by today's law enforcement agencies also played a large role in the success of the investigations. Technologies like ShotSpotter, license plate reader systems, community cameras, and partnerships with ATF and their administration of the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network provide evidence-based support and capability for their effectiveness for having an impact on gun violence investigations, helping cities reduce violent crime in their communities. As a law enforcement agency, identifying people responsible for the violent crimes in our community is only one part of the equation. Being able to provide who did it beyond a reasonable doubt is another. It is important for the victims of violent crimes and their families to have justice, and for those responsible to be held accountable. As the Chief of Police, I am committed to leveraging partnerships and technology in order to reduce or eliminate gun violence in our community. I truly value our partnership and close collaboration with the Contra Costa County District Attorney's Office so we may continue to provide them with professional and complete investigations they can file in court. It is now my pleasure to invite Chief Armstrong from the Oakland Police Department up to speak more on his agency's involvement in this case, as well as their dedication to reducing gun violence. But before I do, Chief Armstrong, please allow me to extend my sincerest appreciation and respect for you and the members of the Oakland Police Department for all of the hard work and assistance you provided us throughout this operation. Chief Armstrong.
Thank you, Chief Brooks. First of all, it's an honor to be here. LaRon Armstrong, Chief of Police, Oakland Police Department. I will say that today's events really demonstrate that for those that are involved in group and gang violence across the city of Oakland or other jurisdictions, that cities and jurisdictions do not stop us from coming across those boundaries in order to hold you accountable. I've been very clear from day one that the top priority in the Oakland Police Department is to address violent crime. And today, with the help of the Antioch Police Department, allowing the Oakland Police Department to be a part of your investigation, we believe that it's going to have a significant impact on violent crime in the city of Oakland. I must also say that I owe this city an apology that the group and gang violence that started in Oakland has now found itself in the city of Antioch. We continue to be focused on trying to eradicate both the Case gang and the ENT gang. They have been the focus of violence in the city of Oakland for far too many years and will continue to relentlessly follow up on their activity. I'll say today, when I look at this table, it's ironic to see weapons that look like they should be used in war. But these weapons are actually being used in our community, against people, against human beings. Their lives have to matter to everyone. And so it's my hope that as we look at this investigation and the amount of shootings and violence related to this investigation, that we understand that everybody deserves to live in a safe community. And their safety has been compromised as a result of these groups and gangs. So I appreciate the partnership with DA Bechten and her team, and I hope that we can hold these people accountable who have violated our communities. the Oakland Police Department continues to be committed to partnering with all agencies. I will say to you that as I visited the White House last week and heard President Biden speak to violence being an epidemic, I have said that many times, and it's something that we can only cure by working together in collaboration between departments, district attorney's office, and community. And so today, I really want to express my sincere appreciation for allowing the Oakland Police Department to support the Antioch Police Department in their investigation. I want to thank all of the investigators from the Antioch Police Department that put in many hours to solve these cases and recover these weapons and make those key arrests. I want to thank our officers from the Oakland Police Department for all the hard work they've done to actually help and assist with this investigation, and we will continue to be a partner. So as much as you need the support of the Oakland Police Department, we will be here. It's honest, when I say that these ghost guns that I see on the table, say to me that there is a tremendous challenge trying to control this influx of firearms that are entering our community. And so with new policies coming out of the White House, I hope that we can see less of these weapons in our community. And I hope that we can see a more safer community both in Oakland and Antioch and other cities throughout the Bay Area. So thank you.
Good morning. Dina Becton, District Attorney for Contra Costa County. I want to start out this morning by thanking Chief Tammany Brooks and also thanking Chief Armstrong. Their cooperation and collaboration with our office has allowed us to stand here today as we have taken a step forward towards justice. I also want to congratulate the prosecutors and the Bureau of Investigations in my office for their important work in filing this case. With a successful investigation and arrest here, we are holding these ENT gang members responsible and accountable for the violence that they have caused in our communities. We're no stranger to gang violence. Unfortunately, over the years, we have seen a growing trend of gang members operating in and around our county. And this is one of the reasons why we are so determined to get not only violent gang members off the streets, but also to get the illegal guns off of our streets. The scourge of gun violence is impacting every single facet of our neighborhoods. These agencies that are represented here today, along with my office, are committed to prioritizing the arrest and the prosecution of these violent and dangerous individuals. This successful operation will deter gang violence in our county, and my office is committed to doing everything that we can to deter this type of gun violence. The FBI Safe Streets Task Force, which is managed by my office, and the agencies here today did a tremendous job in bringing some closure to the victims in this case. Families and their families surrounding the heinous acts of violence. With the recent arrest, these violent gang members are no longer on the streets of Antioch and Oakland, and our communities are certainly safer. The investigation remains very active and ongoing. We are continuing to work with our law enforcement partners and encourage anyone with information about these crimes to come forward. And again, I want to sincerely thank Chief Brooks and Chief Armstrong for their cooperation and all of the members of our staff in bringing justice today. Thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, this was a taxing and very complex operation. The Antioch Police Department would like to thank the following 27 agencies for operational support, surveillance, and assistance with takedowns and arrests. And with that, we'd like to thank everyone for coming. Are there any questions? All right. Thank you, everyone.
One question. Chief Armstrong?
Yes, sir.
Like a week and a half ago, we were at headquarters there in Oakland talking about crime in Oakland. You've had a lot of homicides this year. Are these folks responsible for any of what you've seen so far this year in Oakland?
I won't speak to the individual investigations that we have open, but I will say that these two groups are the primary groups in the city of Oakland that are driving group and gang violence across the entire city of Oakland.
Thank you, everyone.